And I'll have to my right.
I'm Jody Sapphire, and I'm serving in Commissioner Beal's stead today.
Good morning, Catherine Robbins Halstead, public member, Searsmont.
Roger Burley, public member, Cliff Island.
Matt Cutler, public member, Amherst.
This is Jason Goulet, LMF staff.
Joe Anderson, LMF staff.
Beth Stiller, public member, Bodenham. Barbara Trapton, public member, Brunswick. Laura Graham, LMF director.
Oh, sorry, I keep forgetting I'm here. We have a version that I'm filling in for Julia.
All right.
Dan Grenier with the Maine Bureau of Parks.
Forgery, IMW.
All right. Well, welcome, everyone. It looks like there's some people online as well. So I think the agenda today, we're going to go through some ground rules and then review the consensus scoring and scoring guidelines. And we're going to have a conversation around, oh, if you have it up there, that's great.
Yeah.
Consensus scoring around qualitative scoring philosophies, go through the available funds, and the board will do the scoring with the public, and then we will go into executive session and discuss which projects to fund based on the scoring that we came to, and then we will come back out of executive session and announce the project selections. So any questions on the agenda? All right, we can move on to ground rules. So these are the ground rules for today. The public is welcome to attend. This is a working meeting. Board members may direct questions to applicants through the chair. Board chair will indicate the appropriate time when public comment regarding a proposal may be provided. Proposals are confidential until scored. This prevents undue influence on the board through the scoring process and is in accordance with state Maine purchasing policies. Board members will refrain from discussing proposals with applicants, the public, or members of the press. Scoring is based on the information contained in the proposal application. Those here to observe will avoid any actual or appearance of attempts to influence the scoring process. Likewise, the board members will refrain from asking questions of the public. Conflict of interest, the LMF statute says if a charge of bias or personal financial interest, direct or indirect, is filed against a member requesting the member to withdraw from a proceeding of the board, that member shall determine whether or not to withdraw and shall make that determination part of the record with that proceeding. The board will endeavor to stick to the agenda and avoid broader topics that may not relate to the scoring process. So, consensus scoring process. Board scoring is by consensus. Consensus means that everyone can support the decision, although it might not have been their first choice. Differences of opinion among the board are expected. If consensus cannot be reached, the board will take a vote. The goal of scoring and evaluation process is to ensure fairness and objectivity in the review of the proposals and ensure the funds are awarded to the applicants whose proposals best satisfy the criteria of the RFP within the LMF workbook. Each evaluator is to take notes. If you take additional notes in connection with your scoring today, please give these notes to LMF staff. So the scoring criteria, and do we have this in our thing as well? In your packet as well, but the base criteria, the naturalness of the land, valued at 10 points, accessibility 15 points, proximity to other conservation lands 15 points, project need 20 points, multiple land assets or
Single exceptional
value 30 points, community economic impact 10 points, municipal support 5 points. And then we have some bonus point allocations available for significant archaeological site at 10 points, public water supply 10, community accessibility 10, climate change adaptation 10, and fear wintering areas 10. All right, so qualitative exploring discussion. Some possible options to get you thinking, but probably think of better ones, maybe not. Your initial question might be, do we act individually or collectively? You might identify priorities that the board wants to emphasize for this round. You might group some of these considerations into a larger unit. For example, increasing geographic distribution question could be coupled with, is this a new applicant? To get at the question of underrepresentation we've all grappled with in the early board meetings. Are there any things that you would like to place lower on the list or even remove? Is this property under threat? Might it be adequately covered in the quantitative?
Next slide has all of them. There you go. Oh dear.
Great. So there's a list of qualitative supporting discussions that I
All print.
cannot possibly see without binoculars.
Yeah, you can't see it too.
I know. Let the applicant have a good track record.
Yeah, I can, sure. And I really thought that people we had.
They're all
on
Okay,
there.
all right,
They're all
we
here.
just use this
They're
one
on the
Okay.
sheets, yeah.
conversation.
What's
All right.
highlighted in yellow?
Oh, what's highlighted in yellow, may I answer that?
Sure.
Is that this is one that says, will the property require an average or low level of ongoing management needs in the case of conservation easements, sufficient matching funds? In the case of conservation easements, sufficient matching funds are needed to monitor and enforce the easement. The board will evaluate whether the proposal includes an adequate contribution as identified by the sponsoring state agency to the state's conservation stewardship or easement monitoring endowment fund. That struck me as an artifact from a time that is long past, because that is not a thing that we do anymore. We don't ask applicants to put anything into a state fund.
No.
Okay, so that's why I highlighted that. I'd be like, yeah, it's probably.
And if I could nod in our board considerations on.
Yeah, your board, those little teeny ones are kind of a Reader's Digest version.
Okay.
We also don't have any conservation easement projects this round.
Oh, excellent. Okay, I mean, not excellent, but yeah.
No, the Reader's Digest version did not include that.
No, okay, yeah. So this was a discussion.
So this is an open board discussion around kind of how we want to approach the scoring.
Yeah.
So any thoughts that you want to start off with? Mac, you usually have some thoughts on it.
Well, I will observe that I think there's some really important elements in there. We've heard the geographic distribution
Yep.
and the issue of there being lots of applicants. I would say, I was thinking about this over the last this round of proposals. I'm guessing that more than half of the land trusts in the state of Maine did not put a proposal for bid. Why is that so? It's certainly way more than half of the vast majority of municipalities have not
Right.
put in a proposal. So, what's going on here? And that makes me think that if we hear from one of those people, applicants that we haven't heard from before, that ought to get special consideration. And particularly if they're from a part of the state that's being underrepresented. But in practice, we have not used these criteria to weigh into our thinking.
Yeah, I would build on that. I thought that as I was reviewing the 12 applications, what stood out to me were 3 of the other board considerations. Does the property increase geographic distribution of LMF investments? Is this a new applicant that's not previously received an LMF award? And then is the property under threat from losing public access? And I don't have a history of what the other awards have been historically, so I wasn't confident that I was able to answer that we were increasing geographic distribution through one project or another. But I think hearing that from staff would be helpful to me to just see if we're accomplishing those objectives. And I would really support kind of elevating those 3 qualitative considerations.
So, no, please.
That's okay. I think the other side of it is, well, I also value being more diverse, and I really appreciated in hearing the proposals from people who are new to the process. I think that as a state, we've clearly seen where real estate is at greater threat in some regions that have been more heavily weighed upon. And I think that in terms of conservation, taking the long lens, that's significant too. And I suspect that we'll start to see greater diversity as a greater diversity of the state is under threat for development. So they can both exist at once. And I think that we shouldn't lose sight of the immediate need in areas where real estate values are increasing and are more popular.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, that by elevating the threat piece also, it sort of would get at that. But, you know, I agree, the underlying question is like, why aren't we getting applications from those other areas? And that's not a question we're gonna solve today, but at least responding to the applications in this round that might accomplish that to some degree would be a little step.
But they barely do. The fact is that in this round, I mean, I've hammered on Aroostook County, Washington County, Penobscot County, Scottsbluff County, and a couple others, and we don't have the proposals to respond to.
So have we, and I should probably know this, but have we, at the annual, land trust conference, have we asked them, like, have we sent out a survey or something to the land trust that maybe attend that and reply to LMF? If not, why not? Look, do we know what the barriers are? Are they a match? Is it having to deal with the DSA, kind of that long term? Do we know?
Well, no, we haven't done a survey. That's a great idea. This is part of what we hit upon with that underrepresented group work we did. And we learned that it was pretty complicated. There were a lot of intersecting things, but I think the idea of a survey is a great idea. Just ask them. So, because no, we haven't done that.
Yeah.
And I will say that until last round, I hadn't seen a Somerset County application in a long time.
That's true.
I don't wanna like blow by that this, and yeah, so I just wanna put that out there too. So I think that is a fantastic idea. People are always asking.
But you have to have somebody to ask, and in the case of Aroostook County, there's one very small land trust in all of the county.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
no, I've been in conversation with Jeff Romano from Maine Coast Heritage Trust, and they are working, they and the Maine Land Trust network that they are so strongly aligned with. They're trying to address the problem, but it's slow.
I just want to go back to Beth's point, because I think NCHT has done an admirable job of reaching out into all the counties and through all the land trusts and municipalities. And, without being too simplistic, when areas of our state feel pressure from development and they realize that piece of land that they've enjoyed, hunting on and hiking on and so forth, really isn't theirs and that it needs to be protected, I think that will be the impetus that will eventually, push more applications towards LMF. Are there additional barriers? We heard it yesterday, or 2 days ago. Some towns don't have the fundraising capacity. Some land trusts don't have the fundraising capacity. And we have done things for Orono, for example, to try and let Maine Natural Areas, the monies that were there, because Bucky Owens raised that as an issue. Could that qualify as match? So, I love surveys, I love more information, but I think Beth is really, from 30 years in real estate, that really resonates with me. When there is pressure, we will see, more entities willing to step up, and there may be some additional barriers that we can address at that point.
I would argue that the one consideration is that you want to be ahead of the curve with the pressure. While the land is still reasonably priced. When you look at the range of dollars per acre that we're being asked to support, there's there's an argument for being more efficient to do the work in places where the land is still, because the pressure is coming, the development pressure, it will arrive. So there's no black and white answer here, obviously. We need to do both. It's a question of balance. I think it's gotten unbalanced.
And I think in our scoring today, I don't disagree with that, Mac. I like to be ahead of the curve. That isn't really our challenge. It isn't really our statutory charge. We are more reactive. At the same time, I think we work with MCHT and other organizations to make sure the word is out, to make sure when a round is announced that, there's good visibility for it. But we are reactive, we have to address the proposals, but I think today when we look at these, if some of these qualitative things ring true with us, either, threat of development or a little town, I won't name towns in public session, but that hasn't seen much and highly values, a piece of land in their local community. I think first-time applicants, I rely on staff to highlight these things for us as we're discussing things, because I think that encourages other entities such as that to be willing to come forward. We have to remember that a lot of these towns and even these smaller land trusts don't have a lot of capacity for putting together, these kinds of proposals, let alone the fundraising capacity to go out. So
I think we should worry about that.
We should worry about it.
And not leave it up to
But
MCHT.
does the LMF board have the capacity to deal with that, or is that more an MCHT issue working through the land trust network? So.
We have asked to have a seat at that table with those groups as they convene, as is the outcome of that gap of representation we did. We've asked to be at that table, so we do stay informed, so we are in a position to be better than just reactive, but also mindful of our role, to be observing, to be right there on the front line observing, to understand what's coming, what's creating these problems, if that helps. I hope they meant it, because I really want to be at that table.
Okay, so I heard from the group that we were kind of looking to prioritize, does the property increase geographic distribution? And is this a new applicant, and is the property under threat from losing public access or conversion to a use that would minimize the value? Were there other things that the board wanted to kind of prioritize?
I think we'd be remiss not to say environmental resilience is something that is important.
There's another one, I'm just reading, number 6, does the relative cost of the property align with the values offered by the property? Is it a good bang for the buck? That's one that I often think about. And particularly when I see prices reaching into tens of thousands of dollars per acre. There is a part of me that wants to, the way this scoring system works, big project with a lot of acres gets a bit better score because it's more likely to encompass more assets and et cetera, et cetera. But a big project, doesn't necessarily work out. You can't take the score and divide it by the dollar amount.
Right.
But there's a part of me that kind of wants to do that in some sense, just to ask how much value am I getting per dollar? How much of that score is that, how much of that high score is because it's an expensive project?
Well, but I think some of that depends on where that large project is, because some of the cost per acre is larger. There's not that many 400 or 500 acre projects in southern Maine, right? It's not those parcels aren't left, but they tend to have a lower cost per acre, but at the same time, so my husband and I are looking at, potentially moving and, there are properties for sale in Cumberland County that are currently in farmland, and they are selling at 8,000 to 10,000 per acre with the easement on them. So, I mean, it's hard to compare that, but those are, and there are a few big parcels of land, those are precious parcels, but they're listing at, I think when I calculated it, it's like the minimum was $8,000 an acre for a property that has a restriction on it. Can't expand any development, can't subdivide it, so those are the things I think we have to wrestle with, because in southern Maine, a smaller parcel is gonna have more, gonna have a higher cost per acre, but those parcels are getting fewer to be able to preserve, and the pressure on those are significant, right? Roger?
So Laura's heard this before, but in my first tenancy on this board in the late 1990s, we had this meeting was actually an overnight meeting. I forget where it was. It was great fun. We actually had wine and food. But on the agenda was a project about 12 acres in the city of Portland. And at the time, I was president of Portland Trails, and so I was very invested in that project. And it was voted down by this board really quickly, 10-1. That's it. So I forget the name of the chair of the board at the time, but after the meeting, or maybe after the wine, he said, if you really believe in this project, we've been talking 25,000 acres, up north and down east, and this is like 12 acres. The difference was that there were 250,000 people living within 15 minutes of this property. So he suggested that I take individual board members to see this project on the Presumpscot, and I did. And so I took every board member, including the commissioners there, and every single one of them was blown away by the beauty of this particular project. Spectacular, Presumpscot River Preserve.
Yeah.
And then, because the city council had to put up matching funds, there are 9 city councilors, and 6 of them didn't even know where it was, right in the middle of the city of Portland. So I took all 6 of them out there, and they immediately said, oh my God, I never knew this existed, and it's spectacular. So 1 year later, came to this meeting, the ward meeting, and the vote was 10-0, or 10-1 in favor.
Yeah.
So the differences were number one, all the people who put their eyes on it, and number two, the fact that no matter what the price, there were 250,000 people who could get there in 15 minutes.
Right.
Huge difference.
Yeah.
Going back to your point about the difference in cost per acre, I'm reflecting back on our last scoring, and I won't mention any particular projects, but we had some projects that had 6 figures per acre. So I think that is a really important consideration that we have to look at, the bang for the buck. I just want to talk about people for a minute, because if you look at the LMF statute, it wasn't just about conserving land, it was making land available to Maine people. It's land for Maine's future. And to me, that's important, and it ties in with what you said, Mac, and that is sometimes a larger parcel can have more ecological values, a wood turtle, a snowshoe rabbit, plants, whatever. But some of the smaller parcels may connect more with people. And so I want to leave people out of, they're a part of the chain of biodiversity. We need to remember that that's an important part for LMF, that, we're getting future conservationists out on the land, these local groups that go out, some of our projects have been adjacent to schools or in towns that haven't seen a lot of conservation. So that community aspect, we've tried to emphasize it a little bit in past scoring criteria, but it's very top of mind, I think, for me.
But my issue is we've tended to think in terms of the, the remote or northern counties. So let's take Aroostook County as an example and assume big projects done by BPL and IFW do a good job of covering a lot of acres up there, and that's true. But what about the people who live in Holton, Presque Isle, Caribou, who want 200 acres on the edge of town that they can get to in 5 minutes, or bicycle out to, or adjacent to their schools? We're not seeing those proposals. There are a lot of communities up there that of this populations in the thousands of people where it'd be really nice to have a town forest on the edge of town.
The good news is that we are seeing them from Oxford County and Franklin County and Androscoggin County. And early on in LMF, we weren't getting those either. So it's moving.
Right.
I think these discussions that we're having are critically important. I would like to see that we have these discussions before we do our individual scorings next time. And because I think it's great that we're having it now, but I would have liked to have had them before I individually scored, just for future ideas.
I'm inclined to agree with you, Matt, that I do think that LMF has a role that it could play to encourage greater applications from particular underrepresented areas. And I think one possibility for a future round or a portion of a future round is to simply earmark up to X amount of money for certain areas of the state. And if that's known well in advance, I would imagine that the land conservation organizations that are larger in the statewide organizations could proactively partner with regional interests and develop those projects. With a very short timeline, it would be hard to do that, but it would at least give advance notice to really be cultivating projects in these areas where there's underrepresentation. So I do think there are ways that, as an organization, the board could encourage that more than it's doing currently.
Any other thoughts? Okay, I think we have 5 priority areas. I'm going to read them again. I think we know there. Geographic distribution, view applicant, the property and the threat, environmental resilience.
Benefit to people.
What is it?
Benefit to people.
Benefit to people. I mean, it does seem to me that maybe not today, but another time at a board meeting, we should probably flush some of this out a little bit. Like how are we going to, as a board, try and encourage, broader application from, or how are we going to support, communities and more remote parts of the state to engage? And, I think that we can say, yes, I agree, and I think we should be reaching out and doing those things, but I think we probably need to map out how exactly we're going to do that, and what does that look like, and what steps can we actually take. And, but we can maybe put that on the agenda for the next board meeting. All right. So, available funds.
Oh, yeah. That's right. You want to go back real quick, Jason, to the slide? This is what we're being requested here. $3,521,895 are the total requests of LMF for all 13 combined. You see how many acres there. You can see there's a lot of match up there. And then the next slide, Jason, is the actual, we have two slides to show the breakdown. This one, it shows how we got the $2.235 million. You can see it all adds up nicely to 42,235 million. The number in the middle, 4,096,110 is how much you have to spend on project awards alone, which then, next slide, and this is the last.
Wait, that's including the interest, right?
That's including the interest,
Yeah.
that's right. I sort of took a cue from last time, I thought that's what you meant. And so here are the available funds, and if you were to find all of these projects worthy and spend all that money, then we would be left with $574,214, give or take. These are still estimates. Yep. For set size.
Okay.
And I don't remember if the beauty shots come next.
They do.
They do. Speaking of wanting to see things, you know, before you do the hard bit of scoring, it'd be a good idea to see them here. We'll just go through them. Beach Ridge Preserve, Black Point, Texas Pond.
That's not the pond.
I'm hoping that's the corner of the pond.
That was a vernal pool.
That was a vernal pool from the application, that's true.
Fox Pond, I don't think it actually touches the pond.
Okay.
But it has a nice vernal pool.
That's a nice vernal pool, I pulled this one up, and then the, I think Gilman Stream Forest, yep. Jackman Adrian.
I want to know if that picture was taken of a Jackman deer.
I hear no. Kennebec House, northbound. Go Black Mill. Out Harris. Noise Mountain. Pleasant Hill. White's Marsh Brook. And that looks like more than a brook, doesn't it? It looks like a marsh.
A big vernal pool, actually.
Yeah. And that's the end of the beauty shots there. This is where I think it's Jason's show. With the,
I think so.
moving. He loves this part.
So thank you all for getting me your scores. I have put them into a spreadsheet and averaged them as the starting point for consensus scoring. I'll be screen sharing that in a few minutes. When I open that up, you'll see the staff score, which is provided just for reference, has no bearing on anything. The board average score and a space to put the consensus score. A couple of notes on what I did with your score sheets. One, I entered everything exactly as entered, whether it was a valid score to our work criteria or not. Like there were, if it was one of the categories where it was 2, 4, or 6 of the eligible scores, and you wrote 3, I put it in a 3, so the average reflected your intent. If you put 2 or 4, I put it in a 3. If you put it in a 10, I reduced it to 6, so that the average didn't get skewed. If you left a category blank, we somewhat arrogantly presumed it to mean 0 if staff had also said 0. If staff had not said 0, we equally arrogantly thought, well, maybe you missed that one or intended to come back to it and didn't. So we left that, we did not count that towards the average so that we didn't put in a 0 that would skew that again. And finally, what you're going to see is rounded, which means if you see that the average is a 0, you know that you gave it points. That doesn't mean your scores were not entered, it just means that it averaged out. So the process that we have used in the past has been that, like I said, I have screen shared the spreadsheet, I walk through it. If the average board score in the category is a valid score, based on our scoring criteria, and nobody objects, it'll be entered in as the consensus score. I have not pre-entered those so that as I'm scrolling down through and typing numbers in, you have time to look and see, wait a minute, I think that's wrong, I want to talk about that one. Again, staff scores are not part of the average here. Everything that is not a valid score or otherwise needs discussion, I've flagged, I've highlighted it in the spreadsheet, you'll see that. But again, always stop and request a discussion on anything. So as I'm walking through this, I've done this in the past. I'd like to actually take the pulse of the board on this. I want to be helpful, but I do not want to editorialize, I guess. These are very much your scores. If it seems relevant, I might, if it would be helpful, explain what the board scoring represents. We have some categories where the scores represent very specific things as opposed to just 5 is more than 3, particularly in accessibility, and there's a few others. So if it seems relevant, I could offer that by way of explanation. I could also, if it's something kind of complicated, like a complicated access question, I could offer my understanding of what the access situation is on the ground leading into this discussion, or I could kick it over to you guys and wait for the questions to come back. What would you like?
I'm happy to hear your guidance. I feel immune to being manipulated.
We never think that.
Okay, everybody's seeing nodding. All right, so I will do that where it seems relevant to me. And always, if you have questions about things, we have the proposals here. We have the criteria here. We have lots of things for your information. I think at least some of the applicants might be available to answer questions. I see me people online. I don't really know who they are. All right. Finally, the scoring criteria. The scoring should follow the criteria in the workbook, but the interpretation and application of those criteria is entirely up to your judgment and discretion. That's why you were appointed to this board. So as far as when the criteria, when the workbook says need, project need based on X, Y, and Z, which of those are more important and what you want to see to award the points, entirely up to you. So before we dive into that, any changes that you would like to make to the process that I have just outlined?
Sounds good.
All right, then. All right, and we have this, before we dive into it, we have this map showing where all the projects are. All right, so bear with me and I will stop sharing this screen. I'll start sharing my spreadsheet and we'll see what we can do. I don't think I can make that a lot bigger.
That's Beach Ridge.
This is Beach Ridge, yes, I'm sorry. I scroll all the way up, you can see that. If I make it a little bit bigger, we'll lose some of the information on the right-hand side, I think.
You might be able to turn off the menu at the top on the bottom right.
Don't you know that? I'm always
don't worry.
hesitant to, okay, that's something. Oh,
Yeah, the toolbar at the top.
toolbar, that would be on Joe's screen.
Oh, got it, all right.
Which Joe can minimize, we just won't be able to see it if anybody raises their hand.
Oh, okay, yeah, no. I don't want that.
All right, can everybody see that okay, or do you even make it
Well,
bigger?
if it's just, if everybody on the board is in the room, do we need to see hands raised right now?
That is up to you guys.
A little bigger would be helpful.
Yeah.
How does it look, Joe, if you close that?
People
Can you, the sidebar that you have there? Yeah, or if you get rid of that or not. Maybe you can.
No, I guess not.
All right, let me see what I can do here.
Yeah.
Jason, can you also just tell us, since we're missing the bottom half, what the final preliminary score came out to be?
I will, as I scroll down, you will see that.
Okay.
One other comment. All of the discussion about qualitative criteria, that is not part of the consensus scoring. This is just the numerical. That's part of the discussion in executive session about which projects are selected for funding. Unless you would like to have that conversation as we're going through the projects, it's up to you. But I think the past practice has been to leave that for later.
I'm not sure I understand. Can you just scroll down for a moment?
Yes.
To Barbara's point, just to.
So all these other board considerations, we have not in the past gone through and given them pluses and minuses as part of this process. Those have just been considered when we go into executive session and you choose which projects get funding.
Okay.
That's where
So the
where
scoring
that
is
conversation
limited.
is had.
And then when we review the funding, we add in the other.
Yeah,
Okay.
so what I'll do is I will go through all these, and when we get to the total, that is where we'll stop with
Okay.
and move on to the next project.
Yeah.
So is that a little bit better? Want me to zoom in even more, even to cut things off? Try one more. See what that looks like.
Yeah, that's good, because we don't need the comments really.
No, that's more for coming out of this.
Yeah.
All right.
And I think we talked about before, like, unless there was more than a certain number of differential, we would just go with the average board score.
Yeah.
So that we didn't go into the minutia, we just accepted if it was.
Yeah, so this is so as I'm going down through this, where things that aren't highlighted, I'm going to just enter in as I go, and if you want to stop and have.
So the average would be 8.
Oh, you're right, I'm sorry, I looked at the wrong column. Okay, so
that would be a 0
connectivity, 0. Yeah, so 0 would be, does not abut any conservation land under our criteria. 3 would be abutting conservation land. It can't be a 1, it has to be either a 0 or a 3. Some board members were persuaded by the river corridor that they talked about during the presentation.
Connected to the Nonsuch River, the Nonsuch River there, yeah.
Yeah, I had put a question of, it seemed like the argument was being made in the application that there is connectivity because the river connects them all. And I wasn't sure if there was any history there amongst the board in interpreting connectivity in that manner or not.
I haven't considered it.
Yeah, and that was my inclination as well, but I wasn't clear.
So do we want to go with 0 or 3?
I had actually given it 3, but then I thought it should be, 0 because it's closer to 0 than 3 with it.
So 0 then?
Here, making consensus on 0. Okay, project need under our workbook, they could receive 20 points for great need or 15 for moderate need.
I would move that up to 20.
I would definitely move that down to 15. I would say that because and I would say that to me, 20 is like really statewide significance. So just to put it in context, I didn't give a 20 for any of these proposals. To me, 10 and 15 is at the regional significance. Okay, fine. It's important to Scarborough. But for the state, no, I don't see it.
The whole Scarborough Marsh, you don't see as significant?
No, I'm saying this project.
Well, this project, the Nonsuch River, runs all the way down through the Scarborough Marsh up to the point.
Well, yes, but if you're gonna hold in the values of everything's connected to, then sky's the limit.
This also gets into the threat of this land, so Scarborough, just drive around Scarborough and you'll see there's tremendous threat.
I agree it's a high level of threat.
Yeah, there's a very high level of threat, and that's one of the major things that I always consider, whether it's a 20 or not.
Yeah, that is what I think about too, with the project being, because I think about the, like, imminent, what is it? Property under threat from losing public access or conversion to something else.
So is the point here that we can't keep it at 18 because it needs to be either 15 or 20?
Yeah, our work says it'll be given either a 15 or a 20.
Yes.
One thing that would be interesting for future is if we could know how much of the area was already conserved or under protection. I think then you could see, and that gives also some points towards underrepresented areas. I don't know if that would be a double counting of that underrepresentation, but I think it'd be interesting to know. That would give me some better answers towards Project Maine.
Well, just to move us along, 18 is higher than the midpoint between 15 and 20. So it would suggest that more of us thought 20 than 15.
Yeah.
I think that will help us a lot, when we look at these scores. If it's clear that we have a consensus around something over the midpoint, we ought to, unless we want to be here overnight.
Yeah, okay. Matt, can you live with 20?
Yeah.
Okay.
At the end of the day, it's not gonna make that much difference.
Right.
No.
Okay.
Hearing 20. All right, water access. Yeah, it can be 2 would be minor significance and 4 would be moderate significance. And our work says it has to be either 2 or 4.
I have a note that I made that just said, I found the freshwater access to be quite compelling. So that's why I gave it a 4.
Any other thoughts? I scored it a 2, but
I gave it a 2 as well, but
I gave it a 4, so
I gave it a
do
4.
you want to vote on it, or, it's, as
I mean,
Max said,
again-
we're up in a very positive score here.
yeah, it's not gonna make
So-
a difference, as Max said, at the end of the day.
I think, I'm going to say we give it a 4.
sure.
Hearing no objection.
Yep.
Again, river or trail system, what do you want to do here?
So I had given them 2 for the river system.
And I had 2, and this actually is a highly canoed trail.
It is.
Down the Nonesuch, and it even has a video in the Scarborough Library.
I gave it a 2, and my note was that it adds to the system of conserved lands and such. But
So I would suggest we give it a 2.
Everyone okay with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Economic development. Here.
So some people gave it 0, some people gave it a 2. What, remind me what the economic community development is supposed to contribute to the local economy and not,
Hang on just a second, I will read the criteria. Demonstrates a positive impact on economic development through letters of support from relevant groups such as businesses, trade organizations, legislators, community partners that describe how the project supports the economy.
So it's basically giving points because people had the time to go out and drum up letters.
yeah,
It was the wealthier land trust that have the staff to do that.
I put a 0, and I can't remember if it was because I wasn't compelled or didn't see the letters or something, but I put a 0.
I give a 0. There's already so much going on in Scarborough.
okay, I'm fine with 0.
Wow.
municipal support. So in our workbook, a 3 would represent a municipal letter of support, and a 5 would represent some tangible contribution to the project, such as funding or management assistance or help with the acquisition process. I think in this instance, they have the letter of support and they are anticipating funding, but the funding is not committed. That's where we are. What would you like to do?
Give it a 4.
I mean, I guess I would say if the funding hasn't come yet, then still give them a 3 and secret, still. I mean, I had this support as a 5, but
It's
I
not
just
gonna make
love
a
it.
difference if you
I
have
had
no.
it as a 5 as well.
all right, then, 5.
Sorry,
I'm hearing 5.
5, okay.
Yeah,
Is it possible to go back up to something not with any intent to change the score, because I understand the average is what the average is, but it speaks to how I interpreted this particular criterion for all of the other applications, and I wasn't quite sure about it. And that's the support for underserved communities. When I reviewed that criterion, in the example of more remote parts of the state where the property did fall within CGEST, I always forget what that acronym stands for, but it falls within one of those identified units of whether it's low income. I did not consider a CGEST location sufficient to earn it 2 points. What I thought was needed was some effort on the part of the organization to truly reach out and partner with some marginalized community to ensure that their access to that parcel was being prioritized in some way. And so I gave a 0 to most of them, even the ones that fell within the CGEST areas. For whatever reason, I gave this one 2. So it must have been that there was an explicit letter in there that talked about engaging those communities. I'm not trying to argue to change that score here, but I just wanted to understand whether I'm an outlier in how I was interpreting that particular criterion for all the other
It
applications.
may not be an outlier, but you differ from me. I definitely wanted to give 2 points for the CGS. And then honestly, it comes back to the issue we were talking about earlier. A wealthy land trust has enough staff to hire a community engagement person. That community engagement person is going to set up programs that reach out to the LGBTQ community, et cetera. That's a great thing. But it's a 2 points open to a wealthy land trust, but a land trust that can barely afford to have 1 or 2 staff members isn't going to be able to do.
The only counter argument I would make to that is I don't think that it's wealth alone that motivates a community to reach out to marginalized individuals within it. I can see how money would help, but I don't think that alone is often the driver. So anyway, I just wanted to get clear.
The other
on how
thing I
folks
was
are
thinking
gonna-
about in this case, it comes up in one of the other later ones. Yeah, the land trust itself has this program reaching out to underserved communities. But this project, this specific piece of land, isn't really going to move the needle anyway.
Yeah,
on that.
yeah, and my
Because
point
one thing,
is
if
not-
you're talking about, we had a project a couple of years ago, it was in Portland, and it was actually located in a underserved community, an area where there was a high density of new Mainers. That one, yeah, that's a no-brainer. It's going to really impact those people's lives because they can walk to it. But if this is just 50 more acres and added to X number of acres, again, it's not going to move the needle on these programs.
No, but I mean, I do think that we have the support for community, unserved communities in there. And we can't ding the land trust because they were in a wealthier part of the state. If they're doing that work and they have the means to do it, then I think we should be applauding that. And I don't think I don't think we can only apply that on scoring line in more depressed parts of the state. I think it has to be applied equally across the state.
Well, again, in the case of Portland, in that particular project in Portland, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'd give them 4 points for this if I could. But
No, I don't disagree, then I did, I don't disagree that this is, but I just think to Jody's point of a larger conversation, I think when we're considering these things, we just have to consider it on the merit of, are they doing that work? And I don't think we should necessarily consider the wealth of the community or the particular land trust if we're going to apply the points or not.
And again, my point was not to argue to change the scoring on this particular project. So thank you for helping me understand that.
I just want to second what you said and just also say that proximity to these underserved communities is important because often they don't have a lot of transportation options. And in the past, I think we've done a good job. I'm thinking of Camp Guston, which is very proximate to Lewiston, Auburn. And I look now at the types of programs that are going on there, and it's really rewarding to see how that has developed over the last couple of years. So I think it's a combination of the organization reaching out, but also proximity to these underserved communities.
Thank you.
So where are we at?
We are moving down to the bonus scoring.
All right, so the preliminary scoring though, can you move so we can see that final score?
So in practice, there's no distinction between the bonus scoring and the regular scoring. So it all gets tallied into that total score at the bottom.
Right, but I just want to see like what is the score? How do we go from
What are you
90 to
looking for?
79?
The final score.
you just haven't.
I'm not done yet.
Oh, okay, sorry. I thought you moved down onto the bonus points now.
Yes.
Oh, these are the bonus
Yes,
points. Gotcha.
so-
I thought you meant the other considerations.
All right, underrepresented geophysical setting, this is an all or nothing.
Give it a 5.
Trying to remember if anybody wants to argue that it shouldn't get the points, I think.
Which one do you want? I'm sorry.
Underrepresented
It really
geophysical.
doesn't matter. It's 10
Yeah,
points
it's
capped.
just do a 5.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember, I don't remember exactly how this one met the criteria.
I would say 5.
Yep.
Yeah, it's all or nothing. You can't do it 3 years.
0, 5.
All right, so there we go. So the final score on this would be 94.
Okay.
Anything else on Beach Ridge before we move on? All right. And on to Black Point, and we'll zoom in again. All right.
Do you mind, Jason, in each case scrolling down first? Because I do find the context helpful to just understand what the average board score total is.
Sure. In this case, the average board score was 88.
Thank you.
Going in. So plan implementation. I remember. Bear with me. No, 3 and 5 mean something on this one. All right.
The number of conservation plans that are.
Yeah, so 3 is furthers the goals of 2 or more plans, but that not in a specific focus area identified by those plans. And 5 would be project location is identified, not necessarily a parcel, but a focus area or something like that. So that is the distinction between 3 and 5 in this category.
I read the distinction as being, sorry, I just want to make sure I'm in the right spot here. This is the plan implementation section, right?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. I read this as a little peculiar, where to get 5 points, the project has to be specifically identified as a priority.
Not necessarily the parcel, But for instance, you look at like the, habitat, beginning with habitat, it's not the statewide focus areas, where these are, focus areas of ecological significance. If the project is within that, that would be what we mean by the 5.
I see. Because in this case, the Lake Association plan even mentions the parcel as a top priority. So that's why I gave it 5 points. And I thought how unusual it is for actually a parcel to be identified.
I will say that this is the question of what types of plans qualify and how specifically it needs to be identified is absolutely where your judgment and discretion come into play.
How local.
Fair. So what would you like to do?
Okay. We ready to move on?
Well, we don't have any, I haven't heard a consensus on 3 or 5 on the plan implementation piece here.
I had 3, but I mean, again, I think that's it.
I had 3.
I had a 3. I also had 3.
3.
I had a 5, but I'm fine with 3. That's what I just had specifically mentioned the Lake Association plan, but if you don't think it counts as a plan, I'm fine with 3.
Oh, that should have been highlighted. I'm sorry. All right, recreation lands. 4 would be moderate significance. 5 would be major significance.
I have it as a 4 with many opportunities that didn't show widespread relative benefit exceptionally.
4.
4.
So it's 4.
4.
Going to bat for 6, so we'll say 4. How about water access?
Wait, sorry.
You can only need 4 or 6.
On the recreation lands, land asset, only be 4 or 6.
Yeah, I thought 6 was what.
It's not too late to change it. I heard people saying 4.
Yeah, no, I thought it should be 4. I just was a little confused.
All right. How about water access?
I had a 6. It's got 2 boat launches nearby. They're gonna have a trail. It's a long stretch on a lakeshore frontage, and much of the state is undeveloped lakeshore frontage. It's pretty precious.
I had a 4, but Max convinced me. That's
Yeah.
fine.
Looks like mine too. 4, but picture 6.
Huh? Okay, good.
Good enough.
Economic development can only be 2 or 4. There's no distinction, except that 4 is more than 2.
I had it as a 4, but I'm happy to do whatever the board. All right.
Go with 4.
It's a 4.
It's a pretty pivotal property.
Yes.
All right.
And look at Madison. We've
Yep.
been through Madison lately. This is the kind of thing they need.
Yeah, all right, that's right, 4. 4 it is.
All right.
Good enough.
And this is 4 again. 3 would be a letter of support. 5 would be tangible assistance.
And there's no evidence of financial support here, as I recall.
I don't recall. Do we want you to look at the proposal and see what they said?
Didn't say it.
Yeah, I had it.
I didn't
as a
recall
3.
either, so
No.
3.
I assume it's just 3.
Is it 3?
All right.
That usually stands out if a municipality is giving out. I take note of it.
I mean, I'm not gonna change it, but it does get to Max's point a little bit,
Yeah.
that some communities
No, it
have
does.
more ability to kick in than others. And
It's true.
But our criteria don't look
Right.
at us.
And they can also get the point if they are active partners in the project.
Yeah.
not just like-
it's not just money then, okay, so they could just be, having the town, public works help with putting in a, a trail, I mean,
Yeah.
a parking lot or something like that.
There's
Yeah.
another, I can't remember which application,
Yeah.
but there's one like that.
Yeah. Okay,
Somebody gave points in the average for freshwater resilience. Does anybody want to make the case for that? Okay, so all these scores, the final score on that would be an 88. Anything else on Black Point? Hearing none. Cox's Pond. So the, I'm sorry, yeah, the average going in would have been a 77. So recreation lands, do you want to give it a 2 or a 4?
Sorry, I just want to make sure I'm on the right project.
Oh, Cox's Pond.
Yep.
Yeah, we're actually, I think we had, we're maybe out of the presentation order now, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We can always jump around if you want to.
No, I just organized by your little tabs, so.
That's impressive, you can see those tabs.
Oh,
Okay,
I can make this a little bigger, I'm sorry.
Cox's Pond,
This is Cox's Pond, yep, from Great Works Regional Land Trust. This is the 24-acre parcel with the vernal pool.
yeah.
To,
Recreational lands, that one, that's the first one.
I give it a 4, I was,
Sales on the property.
it seemed like multiple municipal benefit. Argue either way.
Yeah, I did it too, but I'm happy to have 4.
Yeah, me too.
So 4?
Yeah, I think I was just worried about how much people are gonna access it to make it actually used as a recreational land.
So, but we own property down there and I am astounded at how, I mean, it gets used a lot. That whole mountain area gets a ton of use. Almost to the point like, a little, it's crowded sometimes. Now, I don't know about this particular property, but I do know that those projects down, those parcels down there, get a lot of use and multiple, not like anything.
I just want to say, back in the 80s and the 90s, Big A was the focus of just about every conservation group in the state. It's hard with these applicants when they're adding a piece to a much larger parcel. If we were looking at the larger parcel, the values would skyrocket up. And so I just want to say it has great value. And while we're at it, I gave it a 20 on need, and I'll just tell you, anything in York can be developed and will be developed. And it doesn't matter if it's a discontinued road, the town will want those real estate taxes and they will do what they have to do to make this buildable. So apparently I'm a real outlier on that. If somehow it averaged to 15 even with my 20, but I'll just say, this is a piece that could easily, and to be next to all that conservation land, wow.
I didn't know what to do, so I put 15 plus. And then I wrote development pressure in Southern New York County.
This is,
It's not gonna matter, I think, in our overall scoring, but I just need to say how fragile land in New York is.
we of course have 2 from Great Works Regional Land Trust, and I suggested that we do them back
right, so
rather
the
than
next one,
alphabetical. And
Good point.
this is a good point for one of the reasons I wanted to do that. I'd be more inclined to give 20 points to the other one than this one, it's simply because it's so much bigger. And if we were to compare the two, we'd see the other one didn't do so well because it was of the connectivity issue, or access issue, sorry, the access. But actually, I'd put the other one ahead of this one.
The other one being.
In large part because it's so much bigger.
Weights.
Yeah.
Yeah, As you said earlier, a bigger parcel is easier to get more value from our scoring process. So this is
Although in
only,
this
this is only
case, they come
24
out very
acres.
similar except for the access, and I would argue when ecological values are tantamount, does it matter if we don't have, public road access? People can get to it. Some of the greatest needs are probably for hunters who want to be more dispersed across the landscape anyway. They don't necessarily want to be hunting 100 yards from a public road.
Well, you were talking about the other project right now, right?
Yes.
Yeah, let's
Wait,
hold it. Let's hold it until we get there because
Okay.
All right, do you want to reopen the discussion on this need scoring on this one?
no,
No, I think-
it was a comment. It was not asking to reopen it.
So you always have that option, just because there is a need.
But
an
I'll
average is
argue
not
forcefully if this
Uh-oh, that's
later.
scary. Not sure what that looks like.
All right, water access, 0 or 2.
It has access to Cox's Pond, and they talked about that because they could remember there was a water skier on this
Yeah.
parcel, and they had to close off
Turn.
part of the access, and they were saying there was access from the southern, to the southern shore, right?
This property does not touch.
It doesn't
Cox's
touch
Pond.
it, but I did note that it facilitates access to Cox's Pond. It
That's
makes
what I
access.
They wanted to have access through their other piece of property to the southern shore.
Yeah.
Let's give it a 2.
Okay. Hearing no objection. And again, where they line up, I'm just entering them,
Yep.
stop me at any time. Increasing access to green space. We cannot give them 1, we can give them 0 or 2.
I do too, but I don't remember why.
Could be 2, I have to give it 2, given that this is near a service center. I give it, I'm giving it, but my note says I could have.
Maybe you're
How
universal
could anybody
consensus.
not get it 2 really with this? What project doesn't increase access?
This is, how important is it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, it says provides green space or outdoor recreational opportunities in areas where outdoor recreation may be limited
Okay.
and/or increases connections between conserved lands
Yeah.
and one or more of Maine service centers.
And I think it's the second part that applies to this, it's connecting with that, the
Yep.
rest of that, so I'd give it a 2.
Hearing a consensus there.
So, I mean, do we have a letter from, we got the letter from the municipality in?
Yes.
Okay, that's like.
I think that's a 5.
Community accessibility, in our workbook, 5 would be accessible but by vehicle within 10 miles of service center. 10 is walkable from a population center, school, something like that.
Which one do you have?
I'm looking at community accessibility.
This is a 5.
I did a 5.
5.
All right. All right, and the 2 categories for freshwater resilience and underrepresented geophysical setting. Does anybody want to make the case for it?
Well, I may have misunderstood, but maybe this was one where I didn't get the acreage minimum correct, but I thought what it said was that there was above average resilience on 25. Oh, no, wait a minute.
They got the points for the terrestrial resilience.
Yeah, maybe I'm disregard. I put this down under the wrong line here.
All right, and that would make the final score on this one 80.
Then do you want to do White Marsh now, or to jump to that
We
one?
can jump to that, yeah. All right, so this bigger. This one, the average score was 67. So back up to the top. For accessibility, the workbook said it has to be either a 5 or a 10, and
I would go 5.
Yeah.
6 is only one over the.
Yeah.
connectivity, and 3 would be abutting conservation land, 5 would be connecting multiple conservation parcels to each other. Mapping on this was confusing. I remember they said during the presentation there was an error in the conserved lands layer.
So which does it?
So
One parcel
is
and
it-
multiple?
I think the staff take was that 3 was more appropriate, that the connection was the error in
Okay.
mapping.
Yeah.
So then 3.
All right, project need, again, 15 would be moderate need, 20 would be great need. Barbara, take it away.
Well, no, I'm gonna let Matt.
20.
Yeah.
If we're gonna give the Beach Ridge 20, then 20 here for sure.
Yeah. Thank you, Matt.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Recreation lands, you want to give it a 2 or a 4?
I'd give it a 4.
Me too.
Is that a, also, or you give it a numerical?
Oh, I'm sorry, I would also give it a 4.
Additional 4 for 8.
Multiplied.
Anybody have a John with 4? All right.
Vital ecological functions and values, 4 or 6?
I give it a 4.
I gave it a 6.
6 as well.
I gave it a 6 as well.
All right, go with 6.
I'd go with, I actually did give it a 4, but in this context, I'd give it a 6.
All right. 6 it is.
All right. How about rare, threatened, and endangered species?
Were spotted and blandings not compelling to some folks? I didn't think that one was in question. I gave it a 6,
I
but
gave it
maybe
a
I
6.
misinterpreted.
I did as well,
Yeah.
or special.
All right.
I think I may have given it a 4. It gets into a complicated thing about New England cottontails versus the turtles and so on. It's a tortoise and hare sort of story. And it's
Did you
really
see a turtle here or
counterintuitive because the turtles are actually the landscape users moving around the entire landscape, so probably are using this. The cottontails tend to be territory and sit in one little spot. So it's kind of counterintuitive.
I say we give it a 6.
Yeah, 6 for the turtles.
And the cottontails.
Well, the problem with the cottontail as an argument, this
We
came
don't
up
have any
on
cottontail,
Tuesday, is
just-
you gotta be prepared to manipulate the habitat for them, to seriously call it. I mean, occasionally a dispersing juvenile cottontail is
Yeah.
gonna move through the area, but to call it primary habitat,
They're not just
Yeah.
hopping over.
you gotta go
It
out,
might be
cut
Sunday.
down all the trees.
Farmland and open space, 2 or 4?
I gave it a 2.
I did too.
I gave it a 4.
Yeah, and it is open space.
I'm fine either way, whatever.
I mean, I'll defer to Mac as the.
You give it a 4, Matt?
Yeah, before Mac, I'll do 4.
Yeah.
All right. 4.
Well, honestly, yeah, to be perfectly frank, I'm trying to build up the bottom score. a little bit,
Yeah.
because I think this is a
It's an
deserving
important
project, and it
project.
came, initially, it had our lowest score.
Yeah.
Yep, 4 it is.
I do know our staff love this project. Particularly the turtle biologist.
I'm not biased by the fact that I've been on Bennett Road and
Yeah.
cop
Yeah,
landing
me
and
too,
spotted
many
turtles
times.
there.
And I'd give it a 5 on community accessibility.
I I gave it a 0 on the not accessible by vehicle, but I think the discussion on Tuesday sort of countered what I was thinking. Does it, it's discontinued and there's no vehicular access that's guaranteed, is that correct?
It's the access on this one is complicated. There is a passable road from the south that is or may be a private road rather than a public road with no guaranteed public right to use it, but that's how everybody gets there.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's a discontinued road to the north, it's a continuation of the same road, of course. And that road is probably not passable, so the access would be parked somewhere where up on the traveled part and then walk or bike or unicycle or whatever down the road to get to the property. So whether that, I think this is, again, your judgment or discretion, whether that is considered accessible enough to meet these points.
And the discontinued road, there is the retained right of public,
Right.
guaranteed public access. So it is super fun. You guys really thread the needle.
I think this clearly fits a
We're
lot.
almost there anyway.
Okay.
I think I'm hearing agreement on 5. All right.
So with my clear apology and a big wink, I wonder if there's any analog between land trusts or towns taking steps to actually underserved population to a particular property versus taking steps to bring cottontails to a given property. I mean, it's there, you preserve it and hope that the low-income people come and you hope that the cottontails come. What else can you do?
Well, yeah, but in the case of the cottontails, so
That's a
they're a
rhetorical
habitat
question.
problem. They can only survive in dense shrubbery, so they would have to cut the forest and then grow shrubs. So cottontails aren't gonna get there and stay there without significant damage management. If they do all those things, then they probably will come, but you know, we can't just like hope that the cottontails are gonna get there. They're gonna have to actually alter the habitat. But it's still great, you know, for many other reasons and great for the turtles and even just good to have more buffer land around cotton, because there is cottontail habitat, you know, right in that area. So it's great to have more buffer and less development and all those reasons it benefits cottontail.
And
Fewer
that
cats.
happens occur that would suddenly make that.
Not a fire, maybe.
Exactly.
That's what we don't hope for that.
No, I'm not voting for that,
And I do, and I think we have to, I think we can't just hope that marginalized communities are going to show up to a property either without extra effort as well. So I think there's a lot of parallel, frankly, but not in the way that you suggest.
All right, so that would bring
Okay.
the final score on this to 75.
Okay,
Okay.
our next project is Gilman, is that right?
Yes, now we'll go back alphabetically to Gilman Street.
Okay.
Pull this up for you. And the average score on this was an 86.
Good.
Was an 86?
Yes. Accessibility,
15.
yeah, I believe this had public road frontage, which would be 15.
What's that?
I said I believe this had public road frontage, so it'd be 15.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, my little math game is, it's only one, the average is only 1 off, as opposed to going down to 10.
Ironically, 14 is an eligible score in our workbook.
Okay.
We use 20, then we use the entire range from 10 to 15.
That is funny, okay.
Vital ecological functions and values, do you want to give it 4 or 6?
Give it a 4.
I gave it a 4.
And you're, okay, you're 4.
Yeah. Flag that. Municipal support, again, 3 would be a letter of support, 5 would be tangible support.
Do we have tangible support that we know of?
I gave it a 3,
I
but
think there was some discussion about connecting to the fairgrounds, which I guess is maybe the Lions Club and not the town, I'm not sure.
I think that's only a 3.
I think a 3. Yeah, I agree.
Or, anyone, accessibility, somebody give it points, do you want to make the case for it?
Sorry, what is it right now?
The community accessibility,
It's a 1, but it can only be a 0 or a 5.
so where 5 would be within short driving distance of.
So was our misunderstanding that it was within a half a mile of the village? I thought it was within
But
a
the
half.
village is too small.
Oh. Is that like a,
Isn't that right?
Well,
I gave it
So-
a 10, so I was
So
confused.
10 is essentially
Walking
walkable
distance.
from a population center, school, something, town office, something to that effect. Where
But
people are gonna be able to
it's
just
not town?
readily walk to the property.
so like it's behind the school, kids could just automatically go up there and.
We created that category after we had 4 projects in one round that were adjacent to schools.
yeah.
Yeah, so there's not a minimum size for that. It's, this again, your judgment and discretion, how close, how walkable, how many people?
The subject property is within a half-mile walk of the village of East New Portland at the bounds of the designated potential growth area for the village. The town comprehensive plan encourages residential development within the existing villages and potential growth areas in preference to rural growth. Adding recreation land within walking distances of these growth areas strengthens the town's efforts to discourage rural development and suggests that Gilman Stream Forest will see increasing use over time as population and growth patterns change.
Well, maybe 5 points from a village. I mean, we're talking a very small village.
Yeah, it is.
That's not even a gas station or a
Yeah.
general store there. It's
It's-
tiny, but
If you've been
maybe
through this
walking
area.
distance from
yeah,
a village counts as much as one.
And the whole purpose here is to connect with a more sizable population, to be adjacent to a school or, this is back to the people connection and this is like the Cottontail. Maybe down road, it'll be a bigger, but not yet.
I'm sorry to press this point, but 10 points is that the project is located within a half a mile of and accessible on foot from a residential neighborhood. Then it goes on to mention public school, downtown area, transportation. So I took residential neighborhood and village center to be equivalent, but
Yeah,
That's the
I think the compromise is to give it 5 points.
Ironically,
It's
5.
10 points if
not-
if that were a town, you'd be giving it 10 points, because
I
it's
have
a,
no problem giving it 5 points. I'm just saying the whole point of this addition was to look towards metropolitan areas like Lewiston, Auburn, big population centers with underserved communities. I think we're kind of overworking this, but
I'm fine with 5.
So this is one of those categories where the points have specific meanings and not just 5 is more than 10, is less than 10 and more than 0. 5 points is the project is accessible by vehicle and has a trailhead within approximately 10 miles of one or more of the identified service centers, which this does not.
so it'd have to be either 10 or 0. And I would say, regardless of history, it says what it says here in the scoring criteria, and I do think it meets the criterion for 10.
that's fine.
Okay.
All right, am I hearing consensus on 10?
10 it is. Can you park in town?
All right, well, that brings the final score on this one up to 95.
Wow.
And that is why we do the consensus scoring and not just use the average. All All right, Jackman Addian. Load this up, scroll down for you. The average here is 99. So accessibility, this is this is the category where all the numbers mean things. So 10 points in this would be located on an island or shoreline accessible from a nearby public boat launch with adequate water depth to land or more recreational boats, and is appropriate for the purposes of the project with the primary access nearby water. And appropriate is entirely up to you guys. 5 can mean several things. It can mean.
What did you say, Judy?
I gave a 10 for boat access.
Yeah,
I
I
had
gave it
10
10
as
for
well.
road access.
That's
And
We have consensus on 10, great. Okay, farmland and open space, 2 or 4.
Four.
but for
I gave it 2 because there is so much open space in Jackson.
I agree, no.
I gave it
So I can
2.
go either way.
I'm fine either way.
That's also one of those, do we answer it like, I wasn't thinking about the greater good of the town or the greater geographical region, but just thinking about the property. And I do think the definition of farmland open space for the scoring is not how I would define farmland open space.
This is open space.
Yeah.
I would say the farmland piece of that is largely a holdover from when farmland was not its own separate category.
Yeah.
Open space is the more used part now.
But the definition of open space in here meets the open space of the proposal.
Yep, I looked at it as a proposal, exactly, and that's why I gave it 4 as well. But to your point, Mac, if you look at it as a glance, but I think we have to look at this as a project.
So 4.
Yeah.
About river or trail system.
Two.
Give it to. Except that this is part of
This
the
is part of the
northern
the
forest
whole northern water, northern.
Corridor, which is huge, and it's a tri-state, I
Yeah.
mean, talk about regional significance,
Yeah.
way above Maine, and it's at the beginning of the Bow River trip,
All right.
you know, so I gave it a 6, I mean, I think this is huge. Who's done the
Barbara,
Bow
I
River
often
trip?
feel
I
like you
have.
have lived
you don't
in
go
every
by
corner.
here.
Well, you can get out to Woods Pond, but anyhow, I'm just saying, it's the heartland of the Northern Forest Canoe
All
Trail.
right.
Fine.
4 or 6.
I gave it a 6, I mean,
Let's
this
go
is a
6.
big deal, this is a tri-state.
I could go to 4. I'm having a difficult time going to 6, but
Yeah, let's just go with 4. It's
All right.
not gonna be.
No, you're so stingy.
we're at name calling and we're not even halfway through.
I just asked her if she's getting lunch.
I'm gonna need to call DoorDash.
All right. 4.
Undeveloped coastline. Laura, do you know if our work defines this specifically as coast, like
Oh, like
ocean
ocean?
coast
Oh,
versus
I don't
lake
think it
shoreline?
does. I do not think it ever does. I think I've only ever seen it in that very nice phrase, just like that. I will
Well,
look for sure.
I don't think it's saltwater, is that what you think?
I-
That's what he means. That's what he means. It's not ocean necessarily.
I don't know how this land asset is defined, so I'm asking Laura.
I'm gonna check on the land asset.
Gosh, it is.
Recreation lands.
I say I did interpret it as ocean.
I didn't give it any
I
points,
think it
but
was 2.
Islands,
When
coastal
you go back to
islands.
Black Point, they have a couple thousand feet of
Oh, well,
short
here,
frontage.
in the appendix D, it says, oh shoot. Islands and undeveloped coastline islands, particularly coastal islands, have become increasingly sought after for development, threatening bird nesting habitat and other sensitive ecological values. The state, private conservation organizations, and the federal government have successfully
I think the word coast, it says shoreline, it meant lakes and rivers.
Yeah, that's what I took it to be.
I had it as a 0.
I had it at 0.
Okay.
The rest of it is not.
Successfully protected many valuable islands. Here we go. Maine is famous for its coastline. However, only a small percentage of the coast is in conservation ownership. In particular, there are significant undeveloped stretches of shore, including coastal wetlands and estuaries that provide critical habitat to many species of wildlife. The land must be on tidal water, and the proposal must provide documentation that the project lands are undeveloped and will provide critical habitat.
Yes.
So I knew there was a reason we gave it 0 on the staff.
Actually,
Yeah, we knew what we were doing, sure we did.
I gave it 0 too. I like lake islands.
Okay, increasing access to green space.
And a 0.
That's 0.
I had 2.
Was this community,
Increasing access to green space.
This is the one where I was like, in that area, you know, there was so much already. I didn't look at it as a, I didn't
It's not a
look at it as a whole.
This is real close to Jackman. Getting back, you guys wanted to 10 on being close to a little town. This is Jackman.
But there is a river in between.
there's a river between?
But you can canoe.
This is directly across the river from the village of Jackman.
Yes, 50 feet from the school if you can swim.
Or if you have great confidence in the ice in January, yes.
Well, that's a better way to put it. I hadn't thought of that. Oh, the ice on the, yeah, I wouldn't want to be there. On the lake, you skirt around.
But there's also a path that comes in for hunters and so forth from the kind of northern part, right? Isn't that how?
I don't know, Barbara, you are
I remember-
most
I remember
knowledgeable
reading
person on the landscape of Maine. I think you've lived all over the place.
Or biked it, or hiked it.
I gave
Okay,
it
let's
2.
move on.
Give
This
it a
is
2, what did we give it, a 2? Then?
Doing 2, 0.
I'm
I
fine
think a
with
lot of us
being
gave it
Yeah.
a 2.
0, but
This is a very high score.
yeah.
It's not gonna,
All right. All right.
0 for community accessibility.
well, except for that ice.
Huh?
It's walking distance from downtown
I
Jackson.
know, but I'm persuaded that the water will be an impediment.
Not in the winter.
Am I hearing 0 on this?
Yeah.
All right. 106 total. Anything else on Jackman Addiam before we move on?
Can I just ask a general question? I'll be careful on how I word this. Let me just get the score down. It was 106. Is there a long history of supporting projects where the land has been aggressively harvested, but it still has long-term conservation value because eventually those trees will grow back? But in this particular situation, I was thinking about the fact that we have once paid for an easement on the not LMF, but an easement has been paid on the property, albeit a very old easement and one that doesn't protect a lot. And now we have a parcel that, from what I understand, has been very recently harvested substantially. I could be mistaken on that. And
I think they're planning to harvest, or I don't know. I don't think they,
it's not.
no, they haven't been harvesting.
Laura behind you is shaking her head, it is not
Yeah.
harvested.
What's that?
Is it okay?
Yes, please.
There is a plan to harvest this, but it hasn't been recently harvested. Yeah, I guess I'll look at that.
Okay, thank you.
To your point about the
Yeah.
value, when this is appraised, the appraiser will be looking at the value as encumbered by the conservation easement. So to whatever extent the land has already been received value for that, the current value of the land is reduced by that amount, and
Sure.
the payment they get in this process will be reduced by that amount.
Sure.
And in answer to your larger question, we certainly consider lands that have been harvested, and in some instances, the land only becomes available to a conservation group because the timber values have been taken out of it. Think of some of the areas in ownership by Beirut and managed by Wagner and Rangeley, for example, and other areas. Think of our new national monument, Katahdin Woods and Waters, which was heavily harvested. But they grow back, and this is a long-term view, and so
Thank you.
we don't rule that out.
Thanks.
Okay, so this is Kennebec Highlands to North Pond, conservation corridor. The average score here was 76.
Was what?
76.
Same as,
So. Again, 14 is allowed. Scenic interest or natural features, 2 or 4 here.
I gave it a 2.
Give it a 4. I just flagged the Blaisdell ledges. Go either way.
I had a 2 as well.
All right, 2 it is. 2.
Community accessibility. Which way do you want to go with this one?
It's closer to 0 than 5.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
I put 10 because it looked like the trailheads would be within a half a mile of 60 homes. Anybody else persuaded? Thank you for picking up.
I had 0.
Hearing no.
Hearing no,
Doors are
hearing no
Jumping on that
takers.
one.
Sorry, Jim.
No worries.
So that would bring the total on this one to 75.
Okay.
On to Kingsfield Black Noble, which had an average score of 100.
Wow.
I'm sorry, which one?
Kingfield Black Noble.
Kingfield.
Okay.
Project need 15 or 20.
Yeah.
So 15,
Well,
Sick and injured.
I can go with 15, but let me just tell you, there's a parcel that's right on 27. And if you looked at development along Route 27 going up to Sugarloaf, you know, that would not stay as a part of a community forest for Kingfield very long. That would go very quickly. And So because we can, it doesn't have to be 15 or 20,
It
correct?
has to be 15 or 20.
Oh, it does. I
It's
thought we
only-
had some latitude.
Moderate need can be anywhere from 10 to 15, but great need means 20.
But I think part of this is highly threatened, and the other parts, you know, add incredible statewide significance, I think, to an area that already has statewide significance, that whole corridor with the AT and Black Double and, you know, Crockers, and so I really feel it
20?
has a much, I feel it's a 20. I think it's not gonna matter at the end of the day. This is getting a very positive score, but I'm just raising it because I think we need to really think about it, you know. correctly.
I think you're interpreting Project Maine mostly around the threat, which, yeah, I mean, that's certainly an element, but I find, you know, they've made in the proposal, there was mentioned 2 or 3 times that it was abutting, I forget the figure, 150,000 acres of conservation land. And honestly, I mean, I'm all for more conservation, but in terms of just geographic distribution on the state, you have to ask, when is enough enough? Is 150,000 acres in one modest region of the state enough? And we should be thinking about Aroostook County.
Well, I would just go
I
to,
never thought I'd hear you say those words.
I would just read again what great need says here. And it says, the project will protect resources that are rare or unique, are under severe threat, or in high demand and are not, so not well represented or conserved lands in Maine. This is a whole corridor. You know, one of the things that, you know, the Nature Conservancy and other groups are, it's all about connectivity, you know, and trying to connect these places. This is really a unique statewide treasure here, I'm sorry. And it is under great threat from development. If you drive up Route 27, they're building up on the hills above the Carabasset River. And so anyhow, I realize in the greater scope, I won't say anything else. For me, it's a 20. It'll always be a 20.
Can you live with a score of 15 since most everybody
I can live with that if the rest of you don't see this as an important part of the state.
At the end of the day, it's a high scoring, so I think to move things along, I think, you know, at the end of the day, it's a high scoring, so
Yeah.
I think we have to, the average is
I think we all
15, so I think we should go
important
15.
product given the score that we all gave it, so.
Good effort, Barbara.
As long as you all think.
Quiet.
Yeah, see, someone has something to say.
That's right.
Farmland and open space, 2 or 4 here.
I gave it a 2.
I gave it a 4, but I'm fine.
I'm like, 2.
I have someone 4. I gave you 4.
All right, go for it.
Mute yourself, please. Or how's the dog?
Mute themselves. Well, we love your dog.
Is it a hunting dog?
Doesn't sound like.
You know, I also muted you probably.
Yeah,
No,
that's the only thing.
Okay, good.
Doesn't look too good.
We're at farm and open space.
I think we had agreed on 4.
Oh, sorry, where are we?
Municipal support, I did flag for discussion, even though 0 is a valid score, because we very
Get a
late,
letter.
very late received a letter from the town of Kingfield expressing that they would hold the interest in one of the parcels, which would be tangible support under our.
Okay, so then
Give it a 3.
a 3 or a 5?
5 would be tangible support.
Yeah.
Oh, tangible 5, gotcha.
So municipal support is gonna jump to a 5.
There's your missing 5.
Yeah.
There you go.
Now it's gonna be in excess of 100.
And it is a public water supply, so it is a 10, right?
Well, somebody did not think so, so I would like to make the case that it shouldn't get those points.
I put a 5, and I don't know if this is valid. I didn't see a letter from the water district.
You can't have a 5.
It's gotta be 0 or 10.
Oh, sorry.
It either protects a public water supply or it doesn't.
Gotcha.
It's all or nothing. I think there was a letter.
Oh, it was, okay.
Move on. 10.
Accessibility.
Oh, it's the town forest.
The average was 1, so somebody obviously gave it points. They may want to make the case that it should get the points.
Honestly, we're up to 100 points already.
Closer to 0
One's
than
closer to
5.
zero.
Let's go. Yep.
Does not mean the scores do not matter. We are want to evaluate each project fully and on its merits. All right, 104.
We all know the points.
Mosher Hill Falls, the average score here was a 96.
We're on Mosher Hill now, right?
Yes. So, scores. And implementation. One would be consistent, further the goals of a single plan. 3 would be multiple plans. This may go to what counts as a plan. So, which way do you want to go with it?
I included that the State of High Peaks report identified this parcel or this fall specifically, and so I gave it the higher points.
On plan implementation.
Yeah.
Yep, I did too. There it goes. For this falls of 2 or more plans, the lake pack and the town comprehensive plan.
I'm happy with 3.
3. Okay.
Hearing no objection. All right, would anybody like to argue for great need on this one, Barbara?
Well, this is Franklin County.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to single you out. Does anybody want to argue for 20 points on this, or we go with the closer to 15?
You know, this,
I put 20, but I'm not gonna argue.
yeah, I put 20.
I had 15, but
I put 20.
Getting back to our earlier discussion, this is Farmington, this is Franklin County. This is a newer organization, the High Peaks Alliance. I think it merits a 20.
20.
Okay, 20.
Recreation lands, 4 or 6.
4.
I put it as 6, again, because of the falls, the rarity of it in that area in terms of its accessibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the plan for an ADA trail, would put it into a 6.
And a 40-foot fall. I mean, wow.
All right, 6.
6. All right, underserved communities, yay or nay?
I don't see how it couldn't get 2 points. We just gave 2 points for the one in Jackman and the one in Kingfield. How does this not
I mean,
fall into the
it's a
same
2.
category?
It's 2.
Farmington has a significant
Yeah.
underserved population. Economic.
Sometimes Barbara says things, and it's like, it's a fact, there's no disputing. It is a two.
We all recognize her as on
I was, bringing the down here, I think, because, again, to my earlier, point right at the start of the conversation, I wasn't considering CGIST location sufficient.
So we're in agreement, you're okay with it too?
Fine.
Okay.
Oh, how did we get 8 points?
That was actually a test to see if you guys were paying close attention. It's certainly not a typo by staff. I just did it again.
Okay.
All right, with that 8 corrected to a 5, this gets 104 points.
Okay.
Any further discussion on Motion Hill Falls? Mount Harris. Received an average score of 91. A significant amount. How significant is Mount Harris?
I put a 4, but if we take it in the greater context of the community, for Dixmont, it's significant. Like,
Well,
That's the point.
it is,
That's the point.
Even for a 10 or 20 mile radius around there, it's
Yeah.
not significant.
That's great views from the
Yeah.
top.
it's,
You have to go to Mount Waldo to find something.
yeah, it's the mountain. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Perfect.
Hearing consensus on 6 then?
Yeah, go for it.
Do you wintering area?
Yeah, why didn't that get 10?
But it
This
wasn't
is a,
Because it's not
Documented, was it,
unlisted,
Judy?
it has to be documented, like confirmed, I think of a certain size.
Oh, I thought page 21.
I don't think we gave it.
I looked at the criteria, the one I found myself wondering, and one of the things is it has to be managed with deer as a
Oh,
priority.
that's right, yeah.
Maybe that's where it
That's
failed.
right.
I don't remember the exact, I remember the proposal said that, according, from IF&W, said that it met all but one of the criteria. I don't know which one was omitted, but
Or can you address that?
Yeah, the main management goal of this
Yeah.
project won't be for deer habitat, so that's why we didn't think of it.
Gotcha.
Oh, it still scores well.
Yeah, it's still a good project.
Still gets a 91, is that right?
91 without the deer wintering area points. Noise mountain extension. I have an average score of 75. Also has the distinction of, I think, being the first project in all the years that I've done this where there are no categories that are flagged for discussion here. So,
Wow. We all
if you
agree?
want to say anything
Wow.
as I am carrying these over.
Do it faster.
This is another one in a community or a county that we don't have as many projects in, Austin County.
But so that'll be a 75.
We on the last one?
Pleasant Hill, yes, this is the last one. Pleasant Hill had an average score of 93.
Of what, Jason?
93.
93.
Accessibility, so 10 points would represent access over adjacent conservation land with a trailhead that has a trailhead on it. Any objection to that?
That's fine.
All right. Project need. Anybody want to make the case for 15 here?
No, I was the 15 that dragged it down.
It's right on a road, there's already a lot of development on that road.
And it's like that sampling grassland.
And it's the same.
Part of I was concerned, I have to say, sort of parenthetically here, I'll take the time we didn't spend on Noise Mountain to say that grasshopper sparrows, why this is getting a 6, I think this is probably a sink for grasshopper sparrows. They
It's
show
not
up there,
big enough?
they sing, it's not big enough to be, for them to breed. So
You think this particular property is?
this
big
property
enough for them
is
to-
probably a
How far away is it
grasshopper
from
sparrow
the other?
sink. And that might suggest management issues like keeping dogs out of that grassland for at least the April through
How many
July.
acres is it? 84, that should be big enough for.
It should be, but I actually went through the eBird, Maine Bird Atlas data.
Yeah.
There's never been demonstrated successful breeding here.
Can you, I should know the exact definition of sink, but I don't.
It means that the birds, they show up, but they never breed.
I never.
But you can talk about populations as sources and sinks. The sinks are the ones where birds move in from other places, but they never reproduce themselves. I'm not saying sinks are necessarily a bad thing, that you should avoid them. They're not the same as an ecological trap. It's another term we could go into, but won't. But it's a marginal situation for the grasshopper sparrows. And I'd be, it was interesting to, there's the whole Brunswick Naval Air Station that kept going about, only sampling grassland. There's actually a much bigger one at the old, the air station. But apparently the grasshopper sparrows have already disappeared from there. Anyway, that's all a big parentheses. It doesn't necessarily affect the scoring. I hope it affects the management.
Yeah.
Could we briefly go back up to support for underserved communities? And I recognize that there are letters, or there is a letter, I think, in the application that talks about specific programming that Brunswick Some Land Trust will be initiating or has already. I don't remember, but so I gave it a 2 as well. I did support for underserved. So I gave it the score that everybody else gave it. That said, I was worried about the response to my question where it states explicitly in the application that the property has significance for the Wabanaki nations, but there's been no engagement with them whatsoever, and I don't know if that speaks well to, I don't have an answer for that in terms of what would be an appropriate response to that, but it's concerning to me that there could be support for a project where that's explicitly stated and it's explicitly not addressed. So I don't know if there have ever been awards with provisions. I have no idea. I don't have an answer here because I don't have experience with it, but I don't think it's good precedent.
And I would just say, once this is in their possession, then there would be expectations in terms of management, in terms of dealing with indigenous populations. It's hard to manage something and have programs when you don't own the property. So I think some of these things, as Matt said, are management issues going forward.
But there wasn't a reference in the application that that would take place.
I recall the answer being, when the question was asked, if they can't find a farmer to manage it, then they would maybe go to the Wabanaki.
Next time. Yeah. And that's when the lease run out.
Yeah. So it's like,
Any further discussion on Pleasant Hill? None of that, this one will have a score of 95. And I have a slide here.
Is that it?
Has all of these scores here, which will probably be hard to read, unfortunately.
Can we take a little bio break?
What's that? Fire break? Yeah.
I think we have just this one, unless you know.
No.
5 minutes. So, only the reason we have this, yes, this is the right side, okay. So these are all the scores, not to compare the scores to each other, but to make sure that you're comfortable that the criteria have been applied equally and, evenly across all of the projects.
Raise your right hand.
So I will kind of, can't quite get all of these up there, and the size is big enough to actually read, unfortunately, with the criteria. So if you want me to scroll over to see what any categories is, let me know. And these are the total scores now at the bottom.
What do you want us to do?
This is your last chance to speak up before these scores are the official, final, cannot be changed consensus scores. All right.
All right.
Yeah, move that we're there.
Please.
All right, I am going to save this. And then stop sharing it, and I think the next thing on the agenda is the motion to enter executive session.
That's right, pull the slide over that motion.
See if I can find it. Bear with me.
Yeah. Are we gonna take a break first?
Well, we can go into executive session and take a break so then people would work. Okay, just listening.
The next slide should be, there's a bit about executive session. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
All right, here we go.
To remind us of our.
So, okay, those bodies, agencies falling within this subchapter of 1 MRSA, section 405, may hold executive sessions subject to the following conditions. 1, not to defeat purposes of the chapter, of subchapter. An executive session may be used may not be used to defeat the purposes of this subchapter as stated in section 401. Final approval of certain items prohibited. An ordinance, order, rule, resolution, regulation, contract, appointment of other official action or other official action may not be finally approved in an executive session. Finally, procedure for calling an executive session. An executive session may be called only by
Executive session.
Public recorded note.
public order. I thought I read it as a member of the public, and I was like,
No.
An executive session may be called only by a public recorded vote of 3 of the 5 members present and voting, 3/5 of, I'm having a difficult time reading it today. 3/5 of the members present and voting of such bodies or agencies.
It's a wee bit more, I'm sorry.
Motion, it's a motion to go into executive session. It must indicate the precise nature of the business of the executive session and include a citation of 1 or more sources of statutory or other authority that permits an executive session for business. Failure to state all authorities justifying the executive session does not constitute a violation of this subchapter. If 1 or more of the authorities are accurately cited in the motion. An inaccurate citation of authority for an executive session does not violate this subchapter if the valid authority that permits an executive session exists and the failure to cite the valid authority was inadvertent. Matters not contained in the motion prohibited. Matters other than those identified in the motion to go into executive session may not be considered in that particular executive session. Finally,
Sure.
deliberations can only on only the following matters may be conducted during an executive session. Discussion or consideration of the condition. Okay, welcome back, everyone. The board has completed our executive session and voted to come back into the public portion of the meeting. And here we go. So here's Barbara would like to make a motion.
I move that the following projects receive a preliminary allocation of $3,521,895 of LMF Conservation and Recreation Funds. Beach Ridge, Black Point, Cox's Pond, Gilman Stream, Jackman Adian, Kennebec Highlands to North Pond, Kingfield Black Nubble, Mosher Falls, Mount Harris, Noise Mountain Extension, Pleasant Hill, White's Marsh Brook.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Unanimous. So we have just awarded or a preliminary allocation of $3,521,895,000. So,
Next slide gives a little bit more, there you go.
all right, so applicants will be notified in writing regarding their selection as a finalist, the board's preliminary allocation of LMF funds to their project, funding conditions. Until that time, board allocations remain confidential. Applicants may request a verbal report from the director following the end of the meeting.
One more slide and
Okay, the next coming meetings, the ALC meeting is June 3rd, 2025, and the next board meeting is July 8th. And now I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
All those in favor? Yay, let's give a round of applause. Great.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for
Thank
all your
you.
work.
Thank you.
So
Joe,
thank
you want to
you,
go
ladies and
offline and
gentlemen.
all
Thank you,
things, Joe? Thank you. Thank you. Oh, thank you so much.
Nice to see you,
Roger.
Roger.
Hi, Tom.